Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast with your hosts, as always, Steve Hall over on this end, and we have Pascal Floor over in the other end, over in Berlin. How is it in Berlin? How's the weather? How's it going?
Right now it's a little bit cloudy, but it is warm, finally. And the last days were quite beautiful, actually. Yeah, and everything else is actually quite well here in Berlin, I would say.
That's good. We have had... The weather's just been so hit and miss. It's kind of like we had nice weather on the week. Well, actually, like one day was nice, the other day is not nice. It's just like, oh, typical British. I'm talking about weather to you, but
I mean, the thing is, I'm doing my motorbike license at the moment, and last, 2 days ago was the first time that I actually had a day of my motor license driving lesson where it was actually decent weather. All the days prior to that were actually quite cold and shitty. So I can't really say that the weather was great here as well.
But apart from the weather, your training, I've heard, has been going well.
Yes, it is. And funny enough, I had a busy week. We've been just talking about it off air. And I've been to the orthopedic as well to get my knee checked. And also at the same time, my back is getting better and better. And I think that slowly we have actually, and I'm not just saying that because I know that I did say that in the past, like assuming that we've found the reason for it or the cause for the problem. But this time I really do think that we have found the cause for it.
Amazing.
And yeah, that is amazing. The back is going better and better. I can up the volume when it comes to my back volume, because probably it is really due to the rhomboids just being overactive all the time, but more so due to stiffness and tightness in my chest area, which is a common thing for many bros doing chest day only. Right, doing too much pressing movements, which I've done in the past, right? And ever since I'm doing a little bit of activation drills for my back and increasing the volume for my back, which would be counterintuitive, which I mean, you have the pain in your back. So what would you normally do? Of course, you pull back a little bit, but this time around, I actually increased the volume for my back. And ever since that, it's going better and better, and it's just on its way to getting even like non-detectable anymore, which is great. And also the orthopedic, which I've seen now, which was the first time I went to that orthopedic, who's working with the Australian Olympic team here in Germany. So they have their standpoint here, their training camp, and he's working with them. And yeah, he's specifically working with a lot of athletes. He got recommended by my physiotherapist, who are working with ballerinas, so dancers, and a lot of gymnasts as well. So I was already quite confident that he knows what he's talking about. And he basically then had a quick look over my back as well. He primarily looked at my knee, but this time he looked at my back as well. Basically just confirmed what the physiotherapist was working on already. And that was just cool. And things are heading into the right direction, and training is just going well at the moment, yeah.
Awesome. No, that's really good news. What is your training looking like at the moment? Because I know your maintenance
6 days a week now.
Maintenance calories though, and
yeah.
Are you doing like a primer, or are you doing more than that?
No, I'm bumping up the volume slowly though. Really going into that more strategically, listening to my body. The funny thing is, I just like to see how you yourself as an athlete, you are evolving from year to year, especially when you are working consciously on yourself, right? It's not just like you are just that puppet who goes into the gym, just ticks off the boxes when it comes to the training protocol, goes home and then just accepts it as the way it is, right? But more so that analytical approach of, okay, how can I get better? What are the things I can improve on? And this is just what I've been doing for the last, I would say now, year or so, taking it much more seriously, but also because I have the time. And of course, along the way of working with lots of clients, you get better in analyzing things and detecting things. And thus, you can also just try things out yourself first before you then apply it to your clients. This is basically what I'm doing at the moment. Just like, okay, I'm here at the moment and I learned more and more so how to listen to my body, how to analyze the data, how to read signals as well. And yeah, because of that, I have the feeling that training is just going well, and I'm more so able to progress in a much better fashion than I did in the past, especially also because we've been talking about that, but putting so much more emphasis on the execution of lifts. And so, which has been the case for me over the past year or so as well, like really nailing the technique. We've been always talking about that, right? But it still boggles me that when I compare my technique now to the technique from 1 year ago or so, I already thought that my technique and form was good. But now comparing it to now, it's just like, it was proper shit still. And there was still so much room for improvements. And probably the same will happen like next year already. Up to a point where it's just like, yeah, I'm confident with that one. Now, from now on, these changes and improvements will just be marginal. But yeah, it's a constant process of getting better and improving yourself as well. And this is just something that I find so cool. And also a reason why I did that one post over on Instagram where I said like, mate, I'm not genetically blessed. I will never be the biggest guy. I have traits on my body such as the loose skin, stretch marks, tattoos that will never make me a great bodybuilder, but hell, I still will do it to the end because I fucking love it. So
your
it doesn't
yearly
really matter.
post.
Yeah, my annual post, yeah.
Which actually got some really good support, which I hope gave you some more, I don't know, made you like social media a bit more, because those are some of the really positive things I think that social media can bring, where you can grow a community, people can encourage one another. And I think that's why I like sharing my story and why I encourage you to as well, just because when we get great feedback, it's when we're up really honest and people see everything that we're going on during kind of our lives with this podcast. And I think people appreciate that blunt honesty because social media and the people you see is the best of the best most of the time, because that's what people like to see. But there's people who follow us who want to see kind of, okay, what are some kind of somewhat average guys, how are they going about things, how are they getting results? So I think it was refreshing.
Yeah, it was. And especially like the feedback from some other people who then jumped on the train and did some posts about that as well, which is just cool to see, because that is just a testament for that there are people who can relate to that. And probably this is the majority of people, because let's be real here, the genetically blessed aren't really the majority out there. These are the freaks. These are the people who attract like, just the followers and the eyes, because it's interesting to see, because it's just so unusual and unnormal. But that shouldn't dishearten you. And yeah.
And I think relating to your your comments in terms of form and technique, I think there's a curve sort of relationship between like time training and your ability to have a good mind-muscle connection. Because I know for me, like with my calves, I'm pretty sure a couple of years ago, I couldn't even flex my calves like in a rested position. Whereas now I can sit here and I can be like, okay, I can tense my left and right calf. And I think there's just, your form improves because you can do this. And then I wonder if there's an element of you're so comfortable in the fact that you've got a certain level of strength that now no longer you're chasing loads, because you can use a reasonable load and make it look amazing. Whereas when you're starting out, you're like, oh, I still need to squat like 2 times my body weight and 1.5 times bench my weight. And it's like you're chasing that rather than chasing the mind-muscle connection. I
mean, when it comes to something like activating the muscle groups, lots of it is probably also physiological, like motor unit recruitment, at the same time, like just the size of the muscle, which then most of the time automatically correlates with motor unit recruitment. So I would then assume like, okay, when you have a bigger muscle, most of the time it is then just a physiological trait already that you can flex it and control it. I mean, when you don't really have a chest musculature, you can't really play with that either, right? So
when I see people, I can remember having personal training clients. It was like the first time they'd ever be dumbbell benching, and they'd just be like, I can't quite do it because my microphone's in the way, but they'd be like wobbling all over the place. They have no scapular control, and it's just like, they're strong enough. Like they're doing it easy. They're doing like sixes, but they're like all over the place. You're just like, this is just. What does Scott Stevenson calls them something? It's like a neuro idiot or something, like where they don't have neurological control of their muscles. I can't remember. He's got a word for it.
So you've been a skinny dude back in the days, right?
Super skinny, yeah.
Okay. Were you one of those individuals who've been able to do that wave with their abs?
No,
because I do remember one of my schoolmates.
I know it.
I don't even remember anymore. It was like at the age of 10 or 11. He was actually having a decent amount of muscle mass already. Now that I look back, it's crazy because he was probably kind of genetically blessed already, right? But he was able to do like this wave motion because he had such good abs already, and I was just a fat piece of shit, and that's why it stuck so much with me. So yeah,
I do remember. I think like called a worm or something within their like ab musculature. But no, I was skinny, but I don't have good abs, so they just didn't really show it through.
I don't know why I need to think about that. But mate, what about your week? It has been a boring week, right?
Yeah, I don't know if, had I said last time we chat whether or not I was continuing to mini-cut, or I think I'd said that I was probably ending it on the weekend or something. I don't know if I'd answered that question.
I don't know anymore.
So mini-cut ended.
I never listened to you when you were speaking. So it's
I just can't remember.
My mind just drifts off. Well, I don't know what I'm thinking about, but definitely not listening to you. That's
well.
A fact.
I can't remember either, so I can't really blame you.
No, see? Exactly. You're not even listening to yourself. So.
But yeah, this week was no more mini cutting. So I did mini cut. And it seems it's really stupid. Like Charlotte was like, why are you continuing to mini cut like on the weekend? But I was like, I need to have done 3 weeks of mini cutting. It's just part of my personality. I was like, I'm not going to be able to not do it this weekend. So I did do it, even though obviously we could have, I don't know, enjoyed eating out or something. I was just like, I just got to get it done. I want 3 weeks under my belt. I have to have that structure. I don't know. So yeah, started maintenance intake the rest of this week. So increased calories by just over 1,000, which has been pretty nice. Immediately felt the benefits of that in terms of just energy levels and everything there. And it's been really nice just to have that. But had so much, unlike you, I haven't been very busy this week, and it's been a deload. So I've had so much time to do various things, which has been nice, because next week's going to be really busy, and I'll go back to AM and PM sessions. So I have to think about my structure as well. But yeah, it's been a pretty easy, dull week. In my deload this time, I've taken a little bit more of an opportunity to try out some new movements. I don't typically program like different movements in a deload. I think we spoke about it another time, but I just have been trying out some new movements, really, really light. So I did some straight leg deadlifts yesterday and I did barely anything on the bar and barely any sets, to be honest, because I was just like, I don't want to do anything silly here. I don't want to get sore during my deload. But yeah, it's been nice just trialing some new movements. As I might have said before, I'm making quite a large scale shift in my exercise selection, which I think will be nice. But I think the reason, and to reiterate the reason why, is just pumps, staleness. Like I've just been seeping in with a lot of the movements I've been doing, which I've been doing some of them for, close to a year with like back squatting. But I'm still going to be back squatting just with a pause, which will be good because that will really force me to focus on control, form, not focus on load too much because you can't in that state. So yeah, I'm excited to get into that, like really excited to get into that on Monday and push body weight up, see where it goes. So that's my week really. I don't think there's anything exciting apart from this light, which is shining on me right now. That's the only change, I guess, which is a sad light, SAD, or seasonal deceptive. I can't say the fucking word. Seasonal disorder. I can't remember what the other word is. It's a seasonal disorder. Basically, people, when they're not in sufficient sunlight, getting kind of impairments because of that. And I don't get much sunlight during the day or in the morning, in fact. So I bought this light so that I can have it shining on me. So potentially...
What has it? Like 10,000 lux or 15,000?
Yeah. This one goes up to 10. I think it has like a 7 and a 5 setting, which I don't really know why, because I don't know, 10,000 isn't that high when you compare it to what's outside. I haven't necessarily noticed anything yet. I think I spoke about it on my Instagram, in fact, with a lot of these little things that you do that potentially help. I don't know if you're ever going to be able to quantify whether or not it's doing anything. And my example is always creatine. I think all of us take creatine, and we don't. I'd never notice if I was taking it or not. It wouldn't be something I'm like, oh, I know I haven't taken creatine for a week. It would be, I just know it's probably doing something beneficial. It's cheap. So, yeah. That's my
absolutely.
week.
And the funny thing is that you made a post about it, and that just sparked a thought in my mind. And I can't really recall what I really said there, but it was like...
It was good.
When you can't justify... No, when you can't tell that it's working, how can you justify taking that? Right? And it's... I mean, creatine, you can justify that in that it's super cheap, and the scientific literature on that is quite overwhelming. So basically, the books are just more so favoring in regards to, just taking it, right? But other than that, there are other forms of supplements out there where it's just like, okay, the scientific literature isn't really as convincing. Also, it is quite expensive. So, and you can't really tell that it does something for you. So how can you truly justify taking that, right? And it just sparked up that thought in my head. And it just, once again, confirmed my thoughts. Of course, there's kind of confirmation bias, but that supplements is just like, I mean, do you even have to take supplements? Probably not. I mean, you can always make up the case for saying, okay, you don't even have everything else in check. And I would say there's always something to optimize in the other areas. You can probably get better sleep. You can probably do a better job when it comes to your recovery. You can probably do a better job when it comes to your training, lifting, execution, programming, all that kind of stuff, right? And before you're then going out and taking any kind of, I don't know, spraying your bed with lavender or and stuff like that. I don't know.
I think it's a tricky one because I was asking, we've got a podcast coming out with Greg Potter in future, which I will highly recommend now to people. And I was asking him for like a sleep pyramid in terms of priorities to get right. And I thought he would have a good answer to that, in that he did. But I mean, I thought he'd have some priorities, but he was like, first of all, I want to state that some things are just easy to do, so that whilst they might not have that much of a result for you, they're easy for things to do. So I think something like a supplement, quite oftentimes, I mean, they're going to have barely any result, if any, but people go there because you just take this thing and it might be helping. And then you have to do that kind of risk or cost benefit ratio of like, how much is that costing you? And also a lot of people spend far too much time researching these things and not getting anywhere. Whereas like you said, they could spend more time doing other things. And then you get into the territory of doing everything. Like if you have everything, all your ducks in a row, should you take something for a percentage just in case? And then you can I think there's a good argument to have there and a discussion back and forth. And I think some scenarios, yes. And in other scenarios, potentially we don't know the risks involved with, especially supplements, is so unregulated, and especially ones without much research, it could come out that it's negative at some point. So it's just something you have to have.
You bring up something there, because I've seen that trend around pre-workouts. I don't know what it is. Everyone is just jumping on that train, trying and testing so many different brands of pre-workout and then reviewing it, where it's like, when we know something, that field is quite unregulated. And especially, how often in the past have they had something in there which then ended up being banned from an organization, right? I don't know. It's just like, because a pre-workout always tries to make the consumer feel something. Most of the time, it is created by beta-alanine in conjunction with some caffeine, right? That tingling sensation. But sometimes it's also in conjunction with other substances in there. And I mean, take a look at what has happened in the past, and that didn't only happen like once. One of the prime examples is, I think it was called Jack 3D, right?
Did you ever have it?
No. But when you look at that pre-workout now, you still think you have the connotation with that supplement that, okay, there must be something in there.
It's going to blow my head off.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, it is interesting to see. It's just, I guess, and I'd be a hypocrite if I wasn't to say I'm one of these people. I am very willing to invest stupid amounts of money into bodybuilding because I have no other hobbies. So if something was there, I will sometimes try it. But 9 times out of 10, when I try all these things, I notice nothing. And I'm like, well, that was expensive. I actually can't commit to getting that all the time. So my supplement list in terms of staples is really, really low.
Mate, and that's the thing. I think that everyone would love if there's a magic pill out there. Everyone. Especially like the top level bodybuilders. And this is something you can always then take as an example when it comes to the typical fallacies out there or fads. When a Gen Pop person then says like, okay, ketogenic diets is now just an arbitrary random example I bring up, right? We don't need to go into discussion about that. But just saying like Gen Pop comes to you and says like, ketogenic diet, I heard that this is the diet with the best results and easiest to do, all these kind of things. So you can then always bring up the argument, okay, why isn't every top level bodybuilder doing that? Or same goes with a supplement, why isn't every top level bodybuilder doing that if it's making things so much easier, right? Because these are the people that are doing it for a living to get down to shredded levels, right? And don't you believe that they wouldn't take the most efficient and less severe route then if there's one out there? I don't think that they are actually taking the road of more suffering like voluntarily. I don't think that this is the case, right?
I think this is why they're fads, because you see it. You see supplements, you see, I don't know, certain training protocols potentially, whatever it is, they come and go. And I think it is because there's people like us who are probably willing to invest more than what most people would into the sport. And then we try it and it doesn't really do what we think it would do. And then we go and something else comes along. Same way with those diet fads that they come in, people invest into it. It doesn't really do what you'd hope it would do. And they're like, stuff that. I'm not keeping that going. And then they just keep cycling it. You see new supplements come in all the time and things like that.
It's funny because I'm not doing that anymore. Actually,
I do it less.
I got so skeptical over the years, which is not always the best thing. But I think especially when it comes to supplements, I'd rather be overly skeptical than too easily believing that it's doing something for you. And what am I taking now? The typical things such as multivitamins and minerals, right? Even that you can make up the argument like, do you even need that, right? But other than that, I hardly ever buy any kind of supplements anymore, which I did in the past. And even if something new comes out, everyone's taking that. I don't know. I'm too skeptical of a person now. And also I'm a little bit too much, and sorry for saying that like that, too narcissistic in a way. And that I'm not believing then the other people when it comes to shit like that, where it's just like, okay, even if there's something for that. So the skepticism and the narcissistic nature of mine doesn't really allow me then to go down that road, seeing other people taking it and then jumping on the bandwagon. It's not who I am. I mean, I've never been like that. And the older I'm getting, the more
like it you are.
Yes. Yeah.
I think for me, and I'm happy saying this, sometimes I will trial a supplement behind closed doors and I won't say anything about it to my audience. On purpose,
testosterone, Diana Ball.
Oh, sorry.
Trenbolone.
Nothing like that.
Okay.
But there will be some I will trial behind closed doors, as it were, because I've seen that there's some people trying it and there's maybe a small ounce of evidence towards it, just to see it for myself. And if it's something like I won't promote it though, and I would never promote it to like clients and things like that, because it's not what I would do. And well, you could also argue because I'm a sponsored athlete, I can't promote it anyway. I can only promote de novo products. Unfortunately, I don't do that a whole lot, and most of their stuff is pretty legit. But it's it's an interesting discussion. I think you could have a long podcast on those sort of areas of.
No.
It's kind of it's so wishy-washy, and Miguel did a post on it today where you see selective evidence-based people where they use science when it suits them, and then they be closed off to science when it doesn't suit them. And you see it all over the place.
I know a couple of people like that. I even once did a screenshot of one of these people who's exactly like this, which is a massive form of confirmation bias. Seeing something that when someone gives you flack or so, then stating, okay, the scientific literature says XYZ, right? Then the science and research is your best friend, right? And just confirming your views, but also at the same time backing you up. And then when you give them shit, for example, for different methodologies that conflict with the current science or current state of scientific literature, then they say like, okay, anecdotal evidence is actually the way to go. And it's I mean, that is so hypocritical, and I don't know. I have a big problem with that, because these are the people, in my opinion, that are the most dangerous in promoting kind of certain things and also giving out information. Because how are people out there who don't have the time and the knowledge and education to decipher what is like good knowledge and not? Because when it's backed with some scientific literature or science, right? Sure, it sounds legit, right? And how should someone with not that much of knowledge then decipher between that or whether it is good? It's basically the same with just typical media when they are writing about, I don't know, something gives you cancer.
Yeah.
And the people, the journalists aren't even able to interpret the scientific literature there, or just the paper. It's just one paper, and it has been done on mice or so, and it's totally out of context. It's a poorly done study, and these pseudoscience people are, in my opinion, one of the worst people out there, and also most dangerous, because they sound reasonable, but give out actually just bullshit information. Most of the time, not always.
Yeah, it's like 50-50.
Yeah. Which is, sorry if I now piss a couple of people off, but that's just my opinion on the matter. And I mean, you have always the opportunity to then educate yourself and also change your stance on certain things. Because I'm not saying that I'm always right, but if there's something about, I don't know, science or so that I don't know, I'd rather than say that I don't know it, because otherwise when I do quote unquote the research, I'm looking into papers or scientific studies, but I don't even know much about that topic. It is kind of deceptive then talking about it, because I actually have no idea about it. If I were to look into, I don't know, something like the muscle memory effect, right? And that one particular study, which Mass also has talked about, the epigenetic study, which is super complex to just read. That is so much out of my scope of practice, and I have most of the time when I read something like that, I have no idea about what they are talking about there, because it's so, you need to have studied that field of physiology or something like that to be able to decipher the information in there. And if you're then doing the research, you can't even interpret the data, right? And then you are giving out most of the time wrong information, or the likelihood is higher that you're giving out wrong information. And then if you're then backing, like saying, okay, I did my research, right, giving out that, then you are basically fooling yourself, but also the people out there. And I think that's not correct, and that's not right.
I think that's something I brought up when we did the first online coaching seminar, was kind of, you're a coach and you're a practitioner, you're not a researcher. And so you cannot expect yourself to know how to interpret research and see the full body of evidence and know the kind of mechanisms behind everything there, which is also important. And this is why we have the Revive Stronger podcast, to be quite honest, is because I knew my limitations and I wanted to learn from the best in their field, which is why we had Alex KT to talk about muscle memory, and we're going to have Greg Potter on about sleep. We've had Dan Pardy on about sleep, and with Brad Schoenfeld, James Krieger, these guys who are able to interpret and do research as well. So yeah, I just think it's a good point.
On another note, though, just to play devil's advocate here, when someone like Lane Norton is, for example, then accusing people of not being researchers and not being able to interpret research, I don't think that's entirely correct either, because you can learn, basically. And the internet is a perfect place to be self-taught in many, many ways. And especially certain fields of science aren't as complicated as other fields. That's just a simple fact. I would say that something like quantum mechanics or physics or so much more complex than, I don't know, zoology or so. I would just say it now like that. Oh, if that's entirely correct, I don't know, but I would assume that it is, because quantum physics is one of the just like insane things you can do.
In the Big Bang Theory, they always take the piss out of geologists, so you can go with geology.
For example, we are safe then to assume that. So you can definitely go out there and learn, and I think that the internet gives you all the information you need to actually learn a lot of stuff. And also there are so many textbooks now, you can learn your own stuff. It will probably take you a little bit longer without having studied that, or without visiting a university and have some tutors or professors at your side who are teaching you stuff. But at the same time, you can learn a lot of things by yourself. And thus, I think that you can learn also to interpret research. Definitely, right? Probably at some point there will be a limitation though. But then saying something like, if you haven't done research yourself, you can't really interpret research. I don't think that's correct either. But at the same time, I think too many people throw around with the term research, or I have done research, and then they only looked at Wikipedia entries, and that's not research either, right? So that's just something I wanted to bring up as well.
I think it was and I don't want to spend too much longer because we need to get some questions, but just when Lyle and Mike debated, I thought it opened up how, while Lyle can interpret research very well, there were, I think, a few points within that where he didn't understand what it takes to take out research, and I think Mike had a better understanding because he has done research before. And as a practitioner now, we don't need to read research with resources like mass, with weightology, like with like RP+. These, like, they're incredible. I don't think it means you shouldn't ever read it. I just think like there's enough of these areas that can keep you kind of up to date, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I trust those people as well.
Yeah,
like in what they are saying and with their interpretation, because if you don't trust anyone, if you think that everyone is bought or so, such as some conspiracy theorists out there, that every doctor is bought by the government, then what can you believe, right? I mean,
do your own research.
Then you're also questioning their ethics, their morals, and their codex of being a researcher, and the reason for why they picked that place or route. It's probably not because they knew that every doctor is being bought and makes a lot of money because of that, but probably because they wanted to get closer to the truth. And if you're then questioning their morals, ethics, and codex, that's not how the world works, because then you would question every researcher on the world, and that the truth hasn't come out yet, that no one ever talked about that. I can't imagine that. No one is able to pay that much money to keep every mouth shut.
No. Cool. Should we get on to questions?
Yeah,
I think that was a good chat regardless. Hopefully people enjoyed it. If you didn't, then comment and say, shut up, guys.
Yeah.
So the first question is from Ben Vincent, and he has asked, it seems like every bodybuilder was a skinny kid who just had to eat a ton to force weight gain. What examples of successful endomorphs do you know?
So I think first things first, Ben, my man, he's my client. So first things first, we have to understand where these somatotypes come from. Somatotypes have been created by a psychologist, I think in the 40s or so, which was, he had the theory that you can tell by the physiological traits of a person their psychological traits. So it had nothing to do with fitness. It had nothing to do with how good or how well you're able to build muscle mass or anything like that, right? And because of that, we see it all the time that in our industry that basically everyone can be an endomorph, everyone can be an ectomorph, everyone can be a mesomorph. It just depends on your level of muscle mass, of training age, because you see it all the time that some people have started really skinny, as you rightly said it yourself, right? And then all of a sudden they just look insane after a couple of years, right? Same goes the other way around. There are people out there who've been a pretty fat piece of shit and stuff like that. Take a look at someone like Sean Roden, for example. He has that before and after picture of his, where he had just like this big belly, just a little bit of saggy tits. You could see there that he had really a pretty severe amount of muscle mass underneath already, but you would never have said that he has the potential of ever becoming Mr. Olympia at some point. All right, and also, the earlier days of, let's just take someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. The junior shows he did, it wasn't really like where you're saying, okay, that guy will be the German oak. Austrian oak. Sorry for that. Never. Because he looked also a little bit chubby. Everything was soft as well, all right? So you never would have assumed that he has the potential he actually then proved the world he had. So yeah, understanding where somatotypes come from, and then it becomes quite clear that thinking in terms of somatotypes doesn't make sense for fitness. And yeah, that doesn't really answer anything about your question, but I just wanted to give you a different perspective on the terminology of somatotypes, and also translating that or carrying that over to the fitness industry, because it isn't applicable at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can only say, yeah, like that's completely right. I think that was a brilliant answer. And the understanding of somatotypes it's such a flawed background. It's nice. It's one of those things that just seems nice. Just like, I don't know, not eating after 6 p.m. sounds like a nice, like, oh yeah, I'm going to bed, so I don't need to eat, and that I shouldn't be eating, otherwise it'll be stored as fat. And it's kind of like, yeah, it sounds nice. Like fasted cardio will burn more fat overall. It sounds nice, but when we have a further understanding, it just doesn't really make sense. The only one I can think of is, I'm trying to, not the latest Mr. O, the last one before that who'd won loads. Why has his name's gone out of my head?
Phil Heath, you mean?
Yeah, Phil Heath, sorry. So yeah, he played basketball before, and he was pretty jacked when he was playing basketball. So I just remember seeing a photo of like a before and after, and it was like he already had like severe amounts of muscle, as you would say. So next question, it's quite long, and I am going to try and pronounce this last name, from Takio Kobayashi. And he says, I assume that's a he. I actually have no idea. Could be a she. Hi guys, just to let you know, your podcast is by far my favorite one at the moment. For always, not just at the moment. I got a slightly longer question and hope it's not bothersome. I snapped my right knee training MMA about 3 years ago, and while my knee joint and ligaments seem to have recovered completely since then, my right leg is at least 1 inch thinner than my left one. Visually, it's a ridiculously big size difference between both sides, especially regarding the outer quads. I hardly notice a difference in strength between both sides. For example, my squats are still working fine. What I'm doing at the moment in hope of bringing up the lagging leg is I'm keeping the total bilateral volume for my quads lower than usual, while simply adding sets to my single leg extensions only for the smaller leg. Does this sound like a smart approach to you, or is there a better way?
So, as you may know, because obviously we are your favorite podcast at the moment. I don't know since when that is the case, but maybe you know that I had my hip surgery back in December 2016. And for me, it's the same case. My left leg is visually much, much smaller than my right leg. And even though that I have done a poor job in trying to balance that out, I think that your approach sounds like a legit one, and I would probably do the same if I ever try to balance that one out.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it. As long as it's recovering, fine. I'd just be careful to watch recovery. Just if you're trying to push volume to try and bring it up, and remember there's a sweet spot, not just more is better in that case. But yeah, you could, it's kind of like if you're trying to bring up a weak point, you keep one at maintenance or a certain muscle group at maintenance and you focus on that other one. I can't see why you couldn't do that. And that sounds like that's kind of what he's doing in his case. I've never had that issue. Actually, no, I do have that issue. My left calf is slightly bigger than my right calf, but both of them are small, so I don't try and bias to balance them out. Shall I get to the next question?
Yeah, let's do that.
So, Emily from Seattle.
Emily from Seattle. We had her already, right? At some point.
Yep. My biggest workouts are on the weekends, and I often get headaches about 3 to 4 hours later. It's not debilitating or as severe as a migraine, but it's noticeable and decreases my productivity for other tasks or projects in the day. I work out during the week, and this does not happen. I was trying to figure out why. I drink a lot of water, so maybe not enough electrolyte replenishment, not enough glucose right after the workout, not enough to eat in my pre-workout meal, etc. Thanks for your thoughts or ideas on this. Always enjoy the podcast. Listen to it every week. Oh, thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much. Do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I think she's doing the right things in that she's focusing on what could be different on the weekend to during the week. Because if during the week you're not getting any issues, then you're doing something right there. And then on the weekend, identify what might be different on the weekend. It might be, like you said, hydration, electrolytes, nutrient intake. That could all impact it. I don't know enough about the brain and why headaches come on to give a good solid answer about that. And I'd probably see your GP and then they might refer you, well, they would probably have to refer you to a specialist about it. But if you're doing all the right things in terms of, you're staying hydrated, you're making sure if you're not getting like excessive cramping or anything, you're getting decent pumps in the gym and things, we can assume your electrolyte intake is pretty good. And then just make sure that you are getting some food in and around that workout. I can't see why you'd be getting a headache consistently later. I'm not sure what that's related to. I haven't experienced it personally, especially consistently. And because it's consistent, I feel like there is something that is probably obvious that you're doing. So I think someone who's more specialist in that area might be able to help more.
No, absolutely. I could only assume as well. And that doesn't really help because it's just like, once again, I already mentioned that it's like a Wikipedia entry or MD doc site where you're Googling your symptoms and then all of a sudden you've got cancer. So, I'm sorry. I could only assume. So I have just one thing you could look into. Does your schedule look different? So what I mean by that is when I'm having a rest day, for example, right? And I don't have my usual schedule. So I get up in the morning, have my coffee, drink a protein shake, make myself ready to go out and be active. But most of my day slots slower. I'm not drinking my coffee. I'm waiting for the others to wake up and then have a breakfast with them. Most of the time, I experience that I'm just super lethargic for the day. And also sometimes I experience having headaches as well. So this is maybe just like, okay, also probably down to caffeine intake for me. So when I don't have my coffee, it just shows how much of an addict I am. But just let's take that away. Maybe it has something to do with your schedule and your, I don't know, maybe biorhythm or so. This is, however, just speculation and assumptions. So it's like Steve says, eventually I would just recommend go out there, talk with a specialist about it.
Cool. So we have a question from Virag, in brackets, Miss P. Oh, no, wait, Miss Virag. It was a tongue out face. I thought it was... Anyway, so she has asked, hi guys, first of all, thank you for everything you do for us. Great help, loads of fun, much appreciated. Thank you very much. So nice.
I mean, so much love here today.
Yeah. My question is, if someone is happy with his or her outlook, weight, etc., what sort of training regime and diet, meal plan, do you recommend to the person? Do you still recommend having a structured system, tracking volume, etc.? Or is it's okay to change things up a bit and have a bit more fun with functional training days, practicing bodyweight stuff like handstand push-ups, increasing number of pull-ups, etc. Currently cannot fit these into my program without having a negative impact on my regular training. Thank you. I have some initial thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, mate.
So I have a client. I won't say the name just in case they wouldn't want it, but I'm sure they'd actually be fine with it. But they don't have any cemented goals. So they don't have like specific strength goals. They don't have specific kind of body recomposition goals. They just want to go into the gym and enjoy it. And they want to, with their nutrition, again, they're not trying to push fat loss. They're not trying to push muscle gain, but they've had years of experience of lifting. They've had years of experience of tracking macronutrients and doing these things. And so with that person, they're using a intuitive eating approach. So they aren't religiously tracking at all. They aren't sticking to a meal plan, but they have like a structure, a routine. They have an understanding of, I want to try and get in multiple protein feedings and roughly have this amount by the end of the day. And they know what that kind of looks like. They eat to hunger and they realize that they can't go and just like smash a whole pizza every single day. If they do that one day of the week, then probably they need to dial it back other days of the week. And they do this kind of intuitive eating approach. And I would recommend you listen to the podcast with myself and Amelia Thompson, where she talks about this and how you might want to kind of slowly transition towards it, where you do eat by kind of hunger cues and you make sure to take time and you're mindful about how you're eating. I think that could be a great way to do it. I would say as long as that causes you very little stress and you have good management over your hunger, you may still want to just roughly track some things. You might want to do like a protein only track and track your body weight and your protein and then just see how you're trending. If you start seeing it go up a little bit, you're like, okay, maybe I should just track my calories, make sure that I'm kind of bringing that down. You reduce snacking maybe. But I think you could get quite flexible with your nutrition. This is something I'm thinking about trying during a primer phase after multiple massing phases. Primer phase for us is like a maintenance phase where you're kind of just looking to maintain weight. I have tracked religiously for a long, long time. Sometimes I go intuitive, mindful on holidays and things, but I've never had like a month off. That would be crazy for me. So it's something I'm thinking about, and I'd have to be in a very healthy, very understanding place. I want to see if it frees me up and also reduces stress, because I have a feeling it could increase stress for me, especially initially. So maybe over a long time it wouldn't. But I think for some people, actually attempting a mindful, intuitive eating approach just causes them more stress. It's just like they could quite easily track. They're more comfortable doing it that way. If they didn't track, maybe they would restrict themselves because they're worried about putting on weight, this sort of thing. It's a wide topic to talk about. In terms of training, once you've earned a certain amount of muscle mass, it's very easy to keep that muscle mass. Maintenance volumes are very, very low. I think you could get away with a lot of different training, functional training, where you're overloading the muscles, maybe not as heavy, but you're doing more volume via these other kind of ways of handstand push-ups and pull-ups and things. I absolutely think you could get very, very free with your training. So it's the amount of volume you need to maintain muscle mass is so low compared to the amount you need to grow it. So I think you could get quite kind of free with your nutrition and with your training.
Yeah. I mean, you basically mentioned everything that was important to talk about. And overall, I totally agree with everything you said there. And usually I would definitely recommend that as well to every single person out there. But just to give a different perspective on things, it's not that I'm totally behind what I'm just about to say, but more so just to give a different perspective on things. When it comes to a structured system, because you were asking, like, do you recommend having a structured system, tracking volume, etc.? I don't think that you need to have a super structured system, but I think still that you want some structure in there. Let me put it this way. You want kind of a hierarchy when it comes to setting up your training or setting up your nutrition, right? And this can look like this, that the bottom of the hierarchy is just like, okay, ticking the boxes, the most fundamental boxes when it comes to progress or so, right? So that you know what you are doing on a week-to-week basis. You're not going in there just to wing it, because that could possibly end up or lead you to just regress as well. Even though that Steve brought up the point that it's super easy to maintain muscle mass, when you're now going out there and you're doing all of a sudden like more endurance type of training instead of kind of resistance training, maybe it could be detrimental in your overall appearance or so, and overall progress. And at the same time, only because you right now you are quite happy and satisfied with the way you look and with how things are going, doesn't mean that in the future you don't again get the aspiration of progressing even further, because we all, and that is just human nature. At some point we get bored by what we have. It's just human nature. It's a psychological trait. We are never satisfied with let's say, or let's call it homeostasis, right? Psychological and physiological homeostasis. Yes, the body always strives for that, but we as a human being, we always want to evolve or get something new or so. This is also the reason why we always are attracted to new things when new things come out. This is the reason for why other people get so much they are so euphoric when the new iPhone comes out or so, right? Even though that they have the older iPhone already and it's a good mobile phone, but maybe they identify with having a new one, right? So it's just human nature to evolve and always move forward and get bored by what you have. Unfortunately, it's the way. It would be so lovely to just accept what we have right now, right? When you live a good life, you appreciate everything you have, especially like us in the Western society. We actually live a really, really good life when we really think about it to the majority of people in the rest of the world, right? But still, we are pushing forward. And once again, just because right now you need somewhat of a break because you actually like where you're at the moment doesn't mean that you are satisfied with that current state in the future. And if you're then kind of, I don't want to call it waste time, because you aren't maintaining or doing something else will probably also be beneficial in it for itself, because then you have the capacity of pushing yourself in the future, like psychologically, but also physiologically. Because you did something else. We have a great podcast about it with our man Ryan Doris, where he talks about his experience with his last bodybuilding season and now changing gears with something like Olympic weightlifting. This would probably be beneficial in the long run as well. But if you were, let's just theoretically say, now to go out and do a lot of endurance work, you're losing a little bit of muscle mass, but your endurance improves, right? And then you're switching back again to resistance training because this is what you always liked and loved, right? And the other thing was just like a little bit of experimentation and a little bit of a short-term desire. Now you're switching back. Maybe you end up regretting what you've done over the past couple of months, that you kind of wasted your time and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that it will happen. Also, I'm always under the opinion that even if you look back and you regret some decisions that you've done in the past, this will only lead to you evolving as a person, getting and gaining more experience. But be just open for that perspective as well, and maybe having somewhat of a structured plan at hand may still give you somewhat of a progression instead of maintaining or regressing even, right? This is just, once again, I just wanted to give a different perspective on things. More so, I agree with what Steve said there, but yeah, just wanted to give other views on the matter as well to widen your opportunities and options here.
I like it. And it makes me think of the quote, and I don't know who I got it from. It was progress is happiness. And it's something, it's like, I don't know what that's called, but it's something I live by. Definitely. I'm never satisfied. Like business, like nothing. I can't, life, relationships. I can't stand still. Like I have to be moving forward.
And it is absolutely normal. And you shouldn't beat yourself up and being like, why am I not happy with what I got right now? It's just also, I don't know if most of you guys have probably heard of Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy. Maslow's pyramid of needs. So it's the hierarchy of what our desires are, what the human needs. Yes, it got some points where you need to be a little bit more skeptical about those. But in the gist of things, it is a really good structure, because on the bottom, it's just like the typical things we need for survival, right? And the more we climb up that hierarchy, probably in a much better place we are, where we don't really need to think about our environment anymore because of war or because we are nearly starving to death each and every single day. We actually have the opportunity to create different problems. And we are always the creator of our own problems, right? When it comes to something like, fuck, I don't have the new iPhone. It is just because our society and you as an individual creates that problem, right? And because of that, it's just human nature that we are always in a kind of in a vicious cycle when you want to see it like that. But it's also good at the same time because that means that we are constantly evolving.
I do love Maslow and his dogs as well.
I never Maslow.
I think it was Maslow's dogs, where it was like the to do with the bell. Like he basically did an experiment where he got dogs eventually to salivate to a bell going off.
Was it Maslow?
Was it? I thought it was Maslow's dogs. Maybe I've got that wrong.
Could be.
Anyway, go search up Maslow. Time for one more question.
Yeah, let's go.
So this is from Hunty Swanigan. That is a
nice
cool
name. Yeah, Hunty Swanigan.
Hey,
sounds
guys.
like a cartoon character.
Yeah,
Also.
it does. Hey guys, loving the podcast over here in Arkansas in the USA. And he has asked...
I think it's called pronounced Arkansas.
Arkansas. Oh yeah, fuck me. I've never seen it written out.
I mean, I could totally be
no,
wrong.
You're right. I was thinking of Kansas. It almost looked like Kansas at the end, so I just said Arkansas. So my question is about ab training. Like most people, my lower abs seem underdeveloped in comparison to my upper abs. This has led me to do hanging leg raises to really target the lower abs, but when I do these, for some reason, my quads fatigue faster than my abs, and I don't really feel it in my abs. Any tips on exercise selection / execution for the lower abs, apart from lowering body fat levels?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. So, lower ab development, hanging leg raises are a really good tool for that, because when you're doing crunches and things, that is more so targeting the upper abs. Decline crunches, any ab flexion movements like that are more so getting the upper abdominals. I wouldn't say that the lower abs are completely useless in that scenario, but they're just not getting as stretched. With hanging leg raises, I think it's really important to make sure that you've arched your back. So really making sure to have basically like a Donald Duck butt, really shove up your chest, really push, arching your lower back, so that, and then really controlling it. So coming all the way back and down, almost behind your hip position. So not just dangling right down to the floor, coming back behind almost. So you're getting as stretched as you can across the abdominals, and then controlling all the way up with your legs and keeping that arch. If you let that arch go, I think you lose a lot of the tension from the abs, and it does come into things like quads and things. With hanging leg raises, I'm not sure it's the quads you're feeling. It might be the hip flexors with leg raises in general, because the actual quads shouldn't be shortening and lengthening, and they shouldn't be under any sort of tension. So it's probably the hip flexors that are getting kind of touched or fatigued from that. But yeah, I can't give a lot of other tips apart from really making sure to have that arch. I'm not sure of any other lower abdominal specific exercises apart from hanging leg raises. The abs are a really tricky muscle group. I will just say that.
It's just something like, leg raises and different variations, like laying as well. What you could do, for example, one that is just killer, I think, is holding on to a incline. No, what was it? Like a bench, basically, I think, on an incline, and holding on to the handle behind you, and then
dragon
really
flags.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
they're fucking horrible.
These are, if you can do
they're
them,
hard as hell.
Because I'm totally honest with you, because I can't. And the same goes for something like, I don't know if you've ever tried it, ab wheel rollout standing.
Oh, I think I have, and I just collapsed the one time I tried
I
it.
can't do that as well. So if you can do them, and I don't think that many of us like properly can, But yeah, so what I always, or what I would recommend you doing is, I just looked it up over on Instagram. It is called Muscle and Motion. So I'm now shouting them out, but they have 750,000 followers. So they don't even care whether I'm shouting them out or not. They should shout us out. Anyway, they are called Muscle and Motion. They are giving really great short videos and explanations about biomechanics and stuff, how the muscles function and so. They have a small and short video about hanging leg raises. When you're doing them, how you should position yourself. And I think, if I remember correctly, and this is something that I already mentioned that in the past, I'm not the best when it comes to biomechanics. I think that many people overestimate their abilities in biomechanics as well. It's a really complex field, and if you haven't studied that, it can be just like absolutely over the top of your head. But this account is great, and I think, Steve, that they are actually recommending that you are actually having a little bit of a pelvis tilt instead of the arch. Because then you're engaging the hip flexors, and then you are in that flex position all the time with the abs, instead of having that arch.
What? So they're recommending having a flat lower back.
Exactly, and then going from there instead of having that arch.
I'd have to see it. There are some things, I was going to say, there's some things on there I like, and there's other things. I've seen a video, I don't know, sometimes, I can't remember what video it was, but I've seen something in there that I don't like. I'd have to see the video. So yeah,
the thing is always, and the thing is that this shouldn't sound like a bad excuse for myself or so, but sometimes I think a textbook biomechanics sometimes not how the body moves or how it works in a practical setting, only because it from a simulation standpoint looks like this. I don't think that you can find it now, Steve. It is somewhere. This is why I don't have it in my head, because I've seen it like 3 or 4 months ago, that post.
I see.
I don't think that you can find it now. But what I wanted to say is, when it comes to a biomechanical standpoint, sometimes, yes, in a simulation, or when you are like trying it yourself or so in a wrong or in a weird position, that may be how the body moves and stuff like that. But I think in a practical setting, it is always influenced by so many different factors as well, like limb ratio, limb length. Also, the thing is, the muscle thickness will impact that as well, like skin thickness, and I'm talking about subcutaneous water retention, along with something like fat as well. These all change your mechanics along the way, right? And sometimes I'm just a little bit skeptical when I see like people saying like, this is the way you should do things, because we all know that sometimes it doesn't work like that. And the best example is something like squatting. In regards to squatting, here, I think Dean Somerset did a great article, 3-part article about just the butt wink and the hip sockets. That it's just every hip is shaped so differently that there is definitely no one way fits all when it comes to squatting, and all the squats look so different because of the anatomy of your hip, and this is just your hip structure. On top of that, the things I already mentioned come into play as well, such as the subcutaneous things, then the muscle thickness and mass. So when you have like massive quads and a super large belly, yes, your hip may be formed that way, but let's just say that the same hip structure, the same person weighing 50 kilogram less would still squat quite differently, right? And this is the reason why sometimes when I see those biomechanical recommendation and these recommendations saying like, okay, this is the way you have to do it, I'm just super skeptical, because that simply doesn't really apply to like 90% or 99% of the people out there. Because yes, it may be a good starting point, but then the individualization comes into play again.
I found the post.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did find it.
And what does it say?
So it is kind of recommending that. The one I'm thinking about is more so when you're against, because that was hanging leg raises just off like a pull-up. I'm thinking about you've got your back on something resting. And I found when I don't do the arch, it feels all hip flexor, whereas when I do the arch, I feel it. So I don't know, maybe he could try both if he hasn't tried arching, and then try not arching and see which one kind of you feel.
But
it
I
more.
think it's good that we always have moments like these where it's just like, hey, for us, it's a moment where we are not even that certain about.
I'm not an expert on biomechanics at all.
Exactly. What is the optimal thing on paper or in a theoretical fashion? But then we can actually just give our recommendation. Man, let's be real here, especially when it comes to something like back movements. We know it all we see it all the time. For some people, just a different grip, different handle works so much better for the back activation than for other people, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I felt like when I arched back, I was already taking the hip flexors out of the movement. So I will try today not doing that and see how it feels. But I always felt like I just got better took the hip flexors out by pushing them back, but we'll see.
I think, but once again, I'm not an expert on biomechanics, and I think that we've made that really clear, but I think that you can't flex your reps without having some activation of the hip flexors as well.
It's probably really hard. The one we had Nick Tuminello on the show, and I asked him about ab exercises because he's quite expert in biomechanics, and he was recommending the medicine ball crunch, and that's something I have been using recently, which was quite nice. It's still hard to stabilize on the ball without your hip flexors coming in. Oh. It's super hard, like, to not get those coming in. So that's why I think a lot of the time machines can work quite well, and doing like cable crunches can work quite well because you can have more control there. But I still think in those movements, the hip flexors come in. It's really hard to isolate the abdominals without
And I don't think that this is necessarily wrong.
No.
It's just the same way when people are saying like, okay, why are your traps involved in your lat raises or so? Because that's just what the traps are doing at a certain range. It's just what they do, right? So, yeah.
Cool. I think we'll chop it off there. I don't think we've got anything to plug or any housekeeping at the moment.
Just a really short London seminar, May 11th, 12th. Yeah.
It's coming soon. It's like a month out.
Yeah, it is. And also in Bath, still tickets available for the contest prep seminar with our guys from Australia, the JPS guys. And yeah, really short plug this time, just for the 100th episode, by the way. We didn't mention that, but it is. Shit. It is. So yeah, we didn't do a 100-minute episode. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
God, we're close though.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Cool.
As always, we love you and appreciate your support.
Cheers.